Welcome to Living in Connection, where we explore the nature of physical and non-physical reality and what that means in your life.
Welcome, everyone. Today we have an interview with Frank DeMarco by Faith Masimer. I am the host for today. I will mostly be off camera. I'm Dirk Dunning, a longtime journeyer in altered states and in science both. I met Frank DeMarco back at the Monroe Institute in 2003 at a program, and we became fast friends about, 30 seconds later? We met Faith Masimer earlier this year as she joined in another Monroe outreach group. Faith is a developmental evidential medium, as well as working in energy healing and studying metaphysics and interested in all of that sort of thing. Frank obviously has been doing a lot of that for pretty much his whole life. He was a publisher for Hampton Roads for a long time, where he published a lot of the books that everybody reads today about this sort of subject. And he's been an explorer and talking using a method he calls intuitive link communication to folks that he calls the guys upstairs. And so this is the first of what we hope is many interviews, many of them with Faith and Frank and many others perhaps. So I'm going to turn it now over to you, Faith, and have a good time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dirk.
Frank, thank you so much for meeting with me today. Really excited to get to know you a little bit better and dive into some of these topics.
I'm looking forward to it. Let's see what happens.
Awesome. So I would love to hear just about your background to start off and how you got started in all of this.
All right. That'll take about 6 hours, and then from there on, nothing substantive. To make a long story short, I often tell people my conscious life began when I went to the Monroe Institute and did a gateway in '92. I was like 46 years old at that time. That's not literally true, but more or less, because that made a big difference. And I had met a psychic just a few months before, and she gave me reinforcement for all the things that I hoped were true and didn't know were true, and then, boy, sometimes you really need that. And so I was able to go into that gateway in a state of expectation, hoping to get what I needed, and I did. Dirk mentioned the guys upstairs a while ago. When I have gone into an altered state, which initially was kind of a bigger deal, today it's not, but I went into an altered state to see what would come, and I never knew who I was talking to, and I never made any attempt to find out. I just left it generalized. I thought, well, whoever I'm talking to, because you have to start somewhere. If there is any kind of a mistake that you can make in trying to learn how to do this that I didn't make, I can't remember what it would be. But sometimes doing it the wrong way helps you out, because then you're in firmer ground when you finally get there. So anyway, while I was doing that, I was actually a publisher at Hampton Roads Publishing Company. Bob Friedman and I had founded it in '89, and I was there for about 16 years. I was a chief editor at the time. Then I took early retirement. Well, I thought I was taking a sabbatical, but I never went back. At the end of 2005, I began talking on a regular basis, practically every day. And the result of that has been many, many books. I think last count is 14, and there are more in process. That was, that's actually enough. I mean, I could talk forever, but that shows where I am emotionally.
Okay. Yes. So then, can you explain who are the guys upstairs?
Okay. I'll give it to you now as I understand it. It may change tomorrow, and it has changed continually.
That's fair.
Basically, the understanding I get now is that we as human beings are in two parts. We're 3D that we're used to, and we're also the non-3D that we're used to intuitively, but not sensorily, of course. And I would say the guys upstairs are anybody, whether they've ever been human or not, who are on a wavelength that we resonate to. So they could be what people call past lives of ours, but they could be somebody who's got the same temperament, or somebody who's involved with the same fascinations that we are, or people that are just there accidentally, so-called, you know, because they're who they were lines up with who we are now. There, I mean, you can add more to that. Mostly the people that I talk to, I don't bother to name or try to name. Some of them have come through with great clarity. Hemingway, Carl Jung, a couple of others, and a couple of what we would call past lives. But mostly I have left it as a sort of a community. They have said, even when anybody who's talking to them, they said often one of us will substitute for the other in the middle of a sentence and you won't even know.
Oh,
Because
well.
we're not as individual as we like to think that we are.
Yeah. So you would call them, a lot of people talk about like spirit guides. Would you kind of categorize it like that, or it's something bigger?
I would say that's one aspect of it. They
Okay.
can function as spirit guides. They can also just function as instructors, you know. Supposing there was a couple of years when I was into pottery and I was trying to learn pottery. At that time, if I had thought in those terms, what I could have done is wanted to communicate with somebody who was really into pottery and even let them use my hands while I was throwing a pot. You see,
Yeah.
there are a lot of things like that. It's easily done, but my hesitation with talking about things like spirit guides, there's a natural tendency to put them on a pedestal and us down below. And from the beginning, the guys have said, don't do that. It's not like we're demigods and you're worms. It's all difference of turf. We're here in 3D, which has certain peculiarities, and they're in non-3D, which have different peculiarities. But of course, our minds are in non-3D as well. That's just how we can contact them.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Different perspectives.
Yeah.
So is what you're doing similar to channeling? I mean, are the guys upstairs always with you? Do you call them in, or how does that work for you?
That's actually about three different questions together, and they work. No, but they work together because I look at channeling. I have never been able to channel. Here's a little side story. All I knew about this stuff was reading Edgar Cayce and then later reading some Jane Roberts. And I thought that, you know, there's only one right way to do it. And if you're going to contact them, I remember I used to lie in bed afraid to move a muscle because I might miss my chance of connecting, you know, and people put certain superstitions around the things. But channeling basically takes as an assumption that you, as the 3D person, are going to be the recipient and you're going to get a download of information. And that's what I thought was going to happen. And it sort of didn't happen. It threw me off. But I eventually learned to do, and intuitive link communication is actually their term, which I have adopted or stolen, depending on which way to look at it, because it's a two-way process. I usually do it with my very high-tech pen and paper, right? And I used to, you know, sit down like for an hour at a time, and they would make statements, and sometimes I would question them, sometimes I would argue with them, sometimes I don't understand that, but yet do it again. We often pass jokes back and forth. It was a very, and they were very insistent on do not put us on a pedestal because they said too much reverence is as distancing as contempt. And I'm afraid that's what happens with a lot of people in the channeling area where they feel like, oh, I have nothing to offer, but I'm willing to receive. ILC says, no, we're equals and we're on different turf, but we can communicate. Let's do it. Let's work together. And
I love that.
The 3D person's active engagement is the important part of it. So that's that one part of your question. Of course, neither one of us remembers the other parts of the question.
Are they always with you? in a sense. I know.
Well, I'm trying to think about a fair way to say that, because they often give me the answer yes, but no, and that's what I'm tempted to do here. We are always connected to the non 3D because that's what we are. We live there as well as here, even though we don't really usually realize that. So in that sense, you can say yes, they're always there.
Mm-hmm.
You can certainly say they're always available to communicate. We're not always available to listen. That's the big
Yeah.
distinction. But even saying we and they is a kind of a mistake, because it's really not, we're not as individual as we think we are, and they're not as individual as we think they are. It's more, you could look at it as two ways: one unit and we're all different parts of that unit, or you could look at it as we're all individuals forming one community. But it really is true that all is one. And any kind of a distinction you make beyond that is, you often need to for the sake of making a statement, but it's not accurate. The most accurate way to say is we are all one thing, and we're all like little neighborhoods of the one big city. All right. So
Okay.
if you look at it that way, how can they not be connected to us?
Right.
However, not every moment are we available to hear it.
That makes sense. Yeah. So have you noticed an overall theme with their messages, or have you noticed maybe like a most important point that they keep driving home?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing they said is, you know how Seth said he came here to show people that it's a safe universe? They came here to say the purpose of human life is to choose. You know, you have a whole bunch of different elements that are put together and they're living together moment by moment. And that is what you're doing. And every moment it's up to you to choose how are you going to react to what's happening. And they don't mean choose going left versus going right, although that's a part of it. But what they mainly mean is, what am I going to be? What values am I going to uphold? What kind of a person do I want to create? And they've often said, you know, well, they've said you can't judge anybody else's life because you never have the data. They also say we can't even judge our own life because we don't have the data.
That's fair.
But what they mean, one example they gave me one time was, you look at somebody and he's a drunk and he dies in the gutter, and you think, boy, that life was a total failure. But actually, his life may have been holding together forces that are not very compatible, and it took all of his strength and energy to do it. And from that point of view, it may be a success. There's no way for us to judge. But to go back to your initial question, they're saying what we are free will beings, and we are to exercise that free will. Everything else they've said about that has been sort of context around there to say, here's why the world makes sense. Here's practical ways for you to do this better.
That's actually, so there's something else I think about quite a lot, and that's free will versus destiny. And so do they talk about whether anything is pre-planned, or is it all free will?
Oh, yeah. No, actually, in a general sense, they've said anything that people have believed has a grain of truth to it. So you don't really go throwing something out and say, well, that's ridiculous. But no, they're saying all of life is predestination and free will. Where you are today could be looked at as predestination because this is the result of all your past actions. But what you do today is your choice. Now, I understand that some people theorize that you could only choose one way because of all your past. You know, it would make it impossible. But I don't buy that, and they don't buy it. They make quite clear. Of course, faith, none of this is ever simple because it always leads to other things, right?
Yes.
So we're talking about different reality streams, and how the quantum theorists now, they talk about life dividing every time you make a decision. Well, the guys don't see it that way because they say that's cramming it into 3D time. That actually, when the universe was created, all possible situations were immediately there. But it's like if you had a game on a 3D, if you had a game on a console and you were playing it, a CD-ROM is the word I was looking for. That's how old I am. All the possible ways that game could go are on that CD-ROM, but every time you run it, you can only run through what you've chosen. Okay. So if you look at life as if this one version were the only version, it's going to look much more predestined. If you look at
Okay.
it like I can choose among versions and move timelines, then it's going to look free will. And as they're saying, it's more of a point of view than an actual choice of realities. The reality is actually a long bell curve between the two.
Okay, yeah. This actually leads into something else I was thinking about, and I think about a lot too, and it's, past lives, but I think you talk about it as threads.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, I'm
yeah.
sorry. Go ahead if you
No,
want to
no,
say
no,
more.
go ahead. It's something I think about quite a lot is just past lives, or is it simultaneous lives, parallel lives instead, if
Yes.
everything's happening all at once, and then timelines. So
All
these
right. Let
things,
me let me back up a little, and I'll give you one of my usual concise answers, which will take
okay.
2 days. Um, let's talk about the nature of the 3D world itself. They
Okay.
have said that the 3D world was created from the non-3D world for specific purposes. And the purpose is to give us the chance to experience creation in slow motion. As creatures, we're also creators. And the
Hmm.
whole purpose of free will is what am I going to do? Be, what am I going to do? But
Hmm.
if, as in non-3D, the moment you did something, it was there. And the moment you changed your mind, it was gone again. You can't create anything more permanent. 3D is created. This is I won't give them attribution all the time, but this is what they've been telling me over the years. 3D is created with certain attributes. One of them is you're stuck in one time, one place. You're absolutely fixed there, and you can't move physically until the time moves you. All right, obviously
Hmm.
you can't go back to next Tuesday. You can't go forward to
Right,
next Thursday. You got to go.
right.
Got to be carried along in lockstep physically. Now, of course, it's different mentally, which should give you
Yeah,
the clue that the mental doesn't actually exist in the 3D. It exists in the non-3D by
yeah.
non-3D rules. The mind is in the 3D. The mind is in the non-3D. The brain is in the 3D, and that's the connection. But because all we can experience is one moment of time, at one moment of time, at one moment of time, and in one place at a time, that's how it seems to us that all of life is. But when you back up from there and you look at it as the non 3D looks at it, it isn't like every moment of time, it isn't like we're jumping from iceberg to iceberg across a frozen river. They're like,
Hmm.
boy, I got away from that last moment just in time to have this present moment created. Whoops, there goes the present moment. I got to jump. We don't think
Right.
of it that way, but that's what it amounts to. But
Yeah.
rather, they're saying from a non 3D point of view, every moment of time that was ever created exists.
Okay.
It's still alive. Everything in the universe is alive, including all those past moments. Well, a past life, there is a Norman monk that I feel very closely connected to from the 1200s.
Hmm.
He had his life. He was born. He lived, and he died. So if you're following on 3D segment, he's long gone. But if you're looking at it from the non 3D or contacting him through the non 3D, he's still as alive as ever. And if he is a thread within myself, my decisions affect him and his decisions affect me, whether or not we know it. And sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. It's a lot more complicated than that, but that's complicated.
Yeah. Do you mind talking a little bit more about threads and how that connection is? I mean, yeah.
No, I don't mind it. I'll talk about anything. The question is, can you shut him up? um,
Just so that people can kind of understand what that means exactly.
well,
Threads.
Rita Warren and I began talking to the guys with me in an altered state and Rita asking questions.
Hmm.
She was with the Monroe Institute, and at the time she was in her 80s, but she had done all of this work for many, many years. And she ran Bob Monroe's consciousness lab for 4 years. She was the monitor for people who were in altered states. And
Okay,
whenever
cool.
those people ran out of their own agenda, she had all these questions to ask them, and she could never get satisfaction. So she would say, well, what's it like on the other side? And they said, well, it's hard to explain. There are no problems here. You'll know when you get here. Rita was a trained academic. She had been a PhD professor as well as working with Bob's lab later. So it frustrated her. For some
Yeah.
reason, possibly because there was a strong, I think largely because there was a strong bond of trust between her and me, she could ask the questions and I could bring forth answers. And I said to her one time, Rita, you're asking me these questions. I don't know the answers to them, but I'm coming forth with great clarity as if I knew what I was talking about. I said, I feel
Yeah.
like I'm lying here being a know-it-all. And she said, that's practically a definition of being an intuitive. Well, Rita would ask all these questions and the answers would come forth. One of the very first questions that she asked was, how many of you are we talking to?
I
And they
love
said,
that.
that question doesn't actually make any sense. They didn't quite know, but very close. And this was the very first question, the very first session, and she gets in trouble, right? But they said, we are not the individuals, we in 3D are not the individuals that we think we are. We feel like that until we look a little more closely. Psychiatrists know better, I think, and people who are experts know better. But what they say we really are is as if our personality were a ring, and the ring was holding together millions of threads. And
Okay.
that has evolved over time. But now I look at it as each of those threads might be a life, might be characteristics of a life. You can't quite say that Bertram is a thread of mine, but you can say that what Bertram was is a thread of mine. If you hear that distinction, his biography is one thing, but the qualities that he made and the soul that he was, not just entering into me, but it could be unpredictable others. Again,
Okay. Yeah.
we're all one thing. We're all part of each other,
Yeah.
which is just what the scriptures have told us, but I don't think people understand it in that way.
Yeah.
If I am a collection of strands, each of which may have been another life, again, separating the biography away from the qualities. We're looking at the qualities, right? So you suppose, okay, I've never tried to do this before, but supposing you had a saintly individual, and that saintly individual, that saintly quality sort of passed through 16 different people. That saintly individual also may have had a bad temper, and that may have passed through some of the same people and some of the other people. He may have been creative, or he may have been stubborn, or any condition that you can think of. All parts of the same individual, but they're like different threads that may go out to other people.
Okay.
So if Bertram and I share one part of I'll just call it a thread, a spiritual value, something like that. That doesn't mean we share everything. So it isn't like, I think reincarnation is wrong in thinking that one full person goes and becomes another full person. I think it's more like qualities from that person may go here, may go there, may go somewhere else. Now, maybe you'll get a lot of those qualities and it'll seem like the same one. And I may be wrong, because the Dalai Lama, apparently they feel like the individual reincarnates to another individual. But that may be because he may be more unitary than the rest of us. You would think that would be likely. Did that answer the question, or did it obfuscate it?
Yeah, no. I have a grasp on that. That it does actually make sense. I was going to ask too, we talk about all these threads. Well, what about what is God then in all of this? Is there God? Is that part of these threads? Again, there's no separation. It's all one. So is that?
Well, the guys have continually said there's no separation in the universe. There's no absolute division. And if there isn't a God, you're almost into a distinction here that's not worth making in a sense.
Yeah.
Because to me, everything is alive. Everything is of the same substance. It would seem to me that everything is God, and God is everything.
Yeah, that's always what I felt. But yeah.
There are problems with that definition too, though.
Yeah. It's a tricky one.
Well, it is, or else people would have settled it a long time ago. I know a lot of people get hung up on how could God have created evil, but that's a different. Then my point is, when we think about God, it's simpler for me to think about God as a creator who created us, and because we're created out of that same substance, we ourselves are creators, and anything we create is creator. That seems, but I don't think that's the end of it. I hate to tell you this, but I don't have all the answers.
You're good. Good. I have more questions. This is great. Let's see here. Well, I guess have the guys talked about like the role of suffering? You mentioned evil, right? Well, what about suffering in general or challenge or, negative? I mean, is there negative forces? Like, what is that?
Okay, let's see how we go about this. Um, you know how I think it's the Course in Miracles says there are only
Yeah.
two forces in the world, love and fear.
Hmm.
I've taken that to mean love means the expansion. I am part of everything. Fear
Yeah.
means I am not a part of this. This is different from me. You see, so that would explain
Hmm.
why there's only two forces. It's either going forward or coming back. It's either
Hmm.
including or excluding.
Yeah.
When you look at it in those terms, now remember they say we're here to embody certain values and live them, right? And to choose on a continuing basis. Will I still do that? You know? Okay, so I come in to be compassionate, and then somebody bashes my car or mugs me or something, am I
Hmm.
still going to choose to be compassionate or not?
Hmm.
Choice. You don't get it one way throughout the world. Parenthetically, the most um, appealing thing I've heard was Viktor Frankl, who spent his life in part of his life in the concentration camps. And in the camps, he came to one conclusion. He said, there's one thing that nobody can ever take away from you, and that is how you choose to react to whatever's happening to you.
Yeah.
And we've seen that in other contexts as well. There was a man who watched, a Polish man who watched his entire family shot in front of his face
Mm.
during World War II. And he later said he had to make a decision at that moment. Was he going to hate or not? And hating would have been very easy, but
Right.
wouldn't necessarily have been such a phenomenal choice, right?
Hmm.
No, they gave a long disquisition on evil, and they made about 5 different categories. I don't think I can bring them up off the top of my head, but I'll give you a couple of them. One is some people think of something as evil just because they don't like it, right? Other people think of it as evil just because it's forbidden. Other people think of evil because they're going, no, this is just wrong. I mean, not it was forbidden, not that I don't like it, but torturing children, is wrong. Okay,
Hmm.
there are all kinds of different um, gradations, but they said they just did that only to clear the area, because they said when you're dealing with real evil does exist, and it can't be just talked away, and of course you can see that every day, but there is a distinction between those who do the evil and the evil that they do. I
Hmm.
was raised Catholic, and there was a saying: hate the sin, love the sinner. And the point of that being, we can all do evil. It may even be that we all are required to do evil. I mean, sometimes our lives just bring us to places where we do evil, not even knowing it. All right, but yeah, well, again, you come back to everything leads to everything else. I'm beginning to understand why the guys upstairs have had such a hard time over these years. um, if okay, let me just break out from that and start again.
Okay.
If you are in life determined to live your values, and they would say everybody does.
Mm.
Everybody doesn't choose the same values. One very
No.
neutral example they gave me once was hunting and fishing. And I really like this because they said to somebody who's concerned about the animals and doesn't like cruelty and doesn't like that, hunting and fishing is wrong. But to someone who values independence and taking care of themselves and living in balance with nature or whatever it may be, hunting and fishing
Mm.
is right. And they would say there isn't any one that's right or wrong there, but it's always relativistic. You always start from where you are and what your values are.
Yeah.
And if your values say hunting is wrong, but your family is hungry, it may be that one value supersedes the other. And that doesn't mean that you have to do an evil thing to have good. It may mean it wasn't evil in that circumstance.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
The problem is we are so, well, not me, of course, but everyone else. We're so prone to make judgments about
Yeah.
good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to say parenthetically, but it's actually not so parenthetical. Some years ago, I had a friend who was an ex-Catholic priest, and I said to him, I had this idea, and I said, is it possible that in the Bible, when they said you can't eat from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, is it possible that they meant perception as good and evil? And he was a Hebrew scholar and a Latin scholar and other thing. And he knew, and he stopped and he thought, and he said, Hebrew has very few, I forget what he said, some kind of a word. But anyway, he said that's a very permissible translation. And you see, that
Yeah.
came to me. I don't remember anymore whether the guys gave it to me or whether I thought it through, which may be
Yeah.
saying the same thing in two different ways. You know, you don't know if your thoughts are your thoughts or if they're being put in, but it makes a difference to say the tree of the perception of good and evil, because if we were in reality and reality was what it is, until we decided to judge everything good or bad, then a lot of consequences come through. And we can see it. I mean, self-righteousness being the least of them, but it's
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So, I guess another question, what do the guys upstairs, how do they describe the true nature of reality? Like, what is this underneath all of our perceptions and our beliefs and our identities? Like, what is the truth? Or how do they describe that?
Yeah, all right. That's a very good question too. The first thing I want to say is that they have never made any bones about the fact that they don't know everything,
Mm,
and I find that somewhat reassuring. You
yeah.
know, because a lot of times I think the temptation is, you know, we are sitting on the throne and we're the ones who know, but they have described 3D life very well, and they have said, you know, it is set up in order to give us delayed consequences so that we can choose moment by moment. And at the end of our life, we have created a habit system, a mind. And that mind remains in non 3D where it really is. And it, in a way, you could say it added to what the world had. It was an addition to the world library. Okay. So when you die, actually right now, but it's easier to think of it when we're not in the body as well. Everybody that you knew, everything that you read, every idea that you had, every experience that you went through, good or bad, is now a part of a library that didn't exist before you lived it. Okay. So oddly enough, this means the universe is not static, but it's being added to. And we're part of the
Okay.
addition. Now, they seem to think that there is a level above where they are, or
I
possibly
was going to
above.
ask that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
above may not be the right statement because it's, you know, talking about hierarchies can get
right.
complicated. But there are things that they don't know.
Yeah.
Um, I do know that Bob Monroe, in one of his out of bodies, experienced what he calls, I don't remember what he called it, but it was basically I theirs. It was people in their non 3D states, and they were connected. And when they got all connected, they disappeared to another level. It was like a graduation, you know.
Whoa.
Now, I don't know if that's true. I don't know, as Bob himself was clear in saying in his book, is it trying to give non 3D things in 3D words is a translation of a translation of a translation.
Yeah,
There's a
right.
tremendous amount of slippage there, but you
Yeah.
got the basic idea of it, and it seems
Yeah.
right to me. It's I'll tell you. Okay, come to think of it, one of the things that they have said is that the universe is fractal. So there's a famous
Fractal.
metaphysical saying, "As above, so below." They're
Hmm.
saying the universe is structured in the same way at various levels. All right, now
Okay. Yeah.
so that so take me as a body. My body is made up of systems. The systems are made up of organs. The organs are made up of cells. The cells are made up of molecules. At every level that and I am part of something larger. Every level that you look at, if you look up, you're a part of something larger. If you look down, it's many things that you're the common denominator for them. If that's so, and I believe it is, there is another level above the guys upstairs, whatever that may be. They don't
Right.
know, and if they don't know, I don't know. But
Right. Yeah. No, I was going to ask about that. That's really interesting. Um, I also want to talk, shifting just a little bit. I also want to talk about people talk a lot about the law of attraction and like manifestation and things like that. And I'm curious about that as well. Like, what do the guys have to say about manifesting? And is there even any, I guess, like reason to do that? Like, does it matter so much? Or is it more about like going with what life? I don't know.
keep going, because you're actually, it feels to you like you're floundering around, but you're actually
Yes.
clarifying it as you go.
Okay. All right. I guess I'm curious about, I guess this is taking me back to free will and destiny again, which is something I always think about. And it's like there are some things in life that feel like they were meant to happen in my life. However, I didn't realize that leading up to it. And me manifesting probably would have tried to avoid that. However, because I landed somewhere that actually opened up beautiful things.
All right, I got you.
Does that make sense?
I can tell you what the nub of this is. Yes, we tend to think this is my idea. I'm the big boss. I'm in
Yeah.
the driver's seat, and what I want counts. But
Yeah.
the actual reality is, and I can see them laughing at us right now, we are a part of something larger, and we don't even necessarily know how to drive the car. It may be that the guys upstairs, as I call them, manifesting through us, are letting us hold the wheel like you do with a little kid, sitting on your lap.
Exactly how it feels.
But but a question that they often ask me is, well, which you? Because so you're saying it felt like I want to manifest this, but maybe 5 minutes later it's a different I in charge that doesn't even remember who that other I was.
Mm-hmm.
If you read Gurdjieff talked a lot about multiple I's. And he's not talking about EYEIs, he's talking about I, a person.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, and the guys that talked about this as they keep changing the helmsman on the ship. And if the captain doesn't keep the ship on course, each helmsman has his own idea about where he wants to go. And they don't remember the previous helmsman, nor do they anticipate the following one. But, and of course, one of the subsidiary goals of being in life is to concentrate all of that so that you have one eye rather than many eyes. You have at least a chairman of the meeting rather than everybody throwing beer steins at each other or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Well, this is sort of complicated because every 3D person of the moment who's in charge thinks of himself or herself as I, and identifies its own viewpoint with the whole being, which is actually laughable, because when you look at your own life with a little bit of distance, you realize, I was in a rage. Was that me? Well, I can't say it wasn't me, but it's not me now, or I was indifferent, or I was confused, or I was feeling in a loving way, I was feeling in an aggravating, all of those things. And they alternate, and being emotions, they cast a mood, and we look through the veil of the mood thinking that's the way the world is.
Right.
When
Yeah.
the mood changes, the world seems to change, but the world hasn't changed. It's our filter that has changed.
Yeah.
There's a joke about a guy with a big mustache who was sleeping on the couch, and one of his grandchildren came in and smeared some Limburger cheese on his mustache. He wakes up and there's a tremendous smell. He goes, "What is that smell?" And he looks here, he looks there. Finally, he concludes, the whole world stinks.
That's a great analogy. That's perfect. Okay, that answered the question too. um, okay, I've been wanting to ask this also. What does it mean to wake up in the 3D?
That's a good question. These are all very good questions. And your answers are not really worthy of the questions in some ways, but you got to muddle through. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Everything that I say, I can hear myself leaving out 5 other things that would probably be important. You know,
yeah.
the guys upstairs are very prolix sometimes, and I think this is the only reason why they have to continually say, all right, let's prune this a little bit. We can't say everything that connects.
Gotcha, yeah.
Remind me of the question.
What does it mean to wake up in the
Wake up.
3D?
Let's attack it from this one point of view then. A lot of what we are is not particularly conscious, but we think it is. A lot of, I call them robots. And what I'm saying about robots, what I mean is, at some point or another, we have established autonomous pieces of ourselves that react without even our knowing it. They react automatically, without our getting any input into it. And they may have been, maybe something happened to you when you were age 12, and you said, this is what I want, that, you know, and from then on, there's this robot that's responding as if you were still age 12, because it's trying to do what it thinks you want. They have no sense of time. They have no idea you're older than 12. The good thing is, if you can get a hold of it and bring it up into the conscious, you can reprogram it any way you want. They'll be glad to do it. It's trying to help. But until you do that, it's going to give you the same previous response. I have 2 analogies. One is an EXE file. If you have an EXE file on your computer, you can call it up, change it, and when you resave it, it's now a new set of instructions. It's the same file, but new instructions. The other one I've already forgotten, but it doesn't matter. Carl Jung, and I've quoted this 100,000 times, Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. And another way of saying that, less elegantly, is as long as the robots are in charge, you're going to think you had no choice. This is the way the world had to be. Waking up, among other things, means getting control of those various robots, deciding whether or not they're still appropriate, retasking them or asking them to go off duty or whatever. Let me be clear. It isn't like they're evil. They're trying to do what they think you want. Sometimes they're trying to do what they think you need, which is even worse, because they're making decisions without the ability to make that decision. For instance, I'll give you a small for instance, which I see a lot. There are people who will have an anomalous experience and they're kind of afraid to believe it. You know, they'll say, well, I'm probably just making that up. Now, that could be their own judgment, but more often it's a robot. And the robot is trying to prevent them from becoming a flake. They're going, you can't just believe everything that you see. Now, the robot might be right in that instance. It might be wrong in that instance. But in neither case is it in your interest to have the robot make the decision. It's up to the conscious mind to make the decision. You can be wrong, but who cares? If you're wrong, you can always change your mind tomorrow. But if you never bring it into consciousness, you never have any say in it. And it is running your life. And here's the thing, it's like you have a circle, and within that circle, maybe 5% of it is free will, is free, and the rest of it is all automatic responses. So the more of those automatic responses you get in charge of, the larger your area of life is.
Right. And it makes me ask, like, the next question is like, what is possible when you get there? Because do the guys upstairs say that everyone has psychic abilities and everyone has the ability to communicate with guidance and remote view and all these things?
Well, the first half of your sentence or of your question is yes. Everybody has psychic abilities because you couldn't live in the 3D if you didn't have them. Whether or not anybody has specific talents, it's like a piano. Everybody can learn to play chopsticks, you know, and we would wish they didn't, but they do. Not everybody is Paderewski, you know. I mean, part of it is innate talent, part of it is interest, part of it is just repetition, part of it is skill, and all these things go into it.
Threads, maybe.
Everybody has the psychic abilities. Not everybody wants to develop them. Not everybody knows how to develop them. And it may very well be, I've suggested this to people, if they have a firm thing that says to them that I shouldn't do this, probably they shouldn't do it. You know, if they're afraid of it, if they're afraid of being taken over by the devil or being afraid of losing their mind or any fear at all, fear doesn't have to be right, but the fear may be telling them this is not your path.
Right. It's a
Or,
message.
or it may just be a fear. You know, you never real
How do you
simple.
know the
Well,
difference?
that's actually an excellent question right there. The guys they quote the Bible a lot, more than I know it actually, but test the spirits. When you get a message, you know, you don't just assume, hey, I got a message from God and he told me I'm going to be the king of the world. You know, you go, well, let's see now. How does that feel? How do I, all of that. Testing isn't glamorous and it isn't even very predictable, but it's important. You know, and I think most people have enough common sense to do that. But the thing is, when you get in these undefined terms that our society has left so vague because it doesn't even believe in them, it's easy for people to get away. I know I got carried away a couple of times. And when I first discovered healing abilities, I was a poster boy for what they call the healer out of control. I thought it was my duty and opportunity to heal everybody in sight of everything they had. And just, I wasn't regarding that as interfering with people's lives, but that's what it would have been. You see? So it isn't a simple thing. Nothing is a simple thing. Everything leads to complication.
It's like it's complicated but simple at the same time sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And the other part of that same idea is you look at it from one point of view and it's entirely different from another point of view. It didn't change, but your perspective changed.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So, do you mind touching on your healing just a little bit and like what you were doing?
I don't mind at all, but a better question would help.
Okay. How were you, what you were doing in, like, what type of healing were you doing? And maybe if you have a particular story, just kind of interested. I've learned Reiki and I'm just interested in energy healing.
Well, I did Reiki 1 and 2, but I knew healing before then. And in fact, I actually regarded Reiki 1 and 2 as being more complicated than the problem. I see the problem as, I see the situation as, we are all energy beings. We are suffused with energy. You undoubtedly know about your palm chakras, which are particularly good for using. My model of healing is, it isn't like I send healing to anyone. It isn't even quite like they receive healing, but it's more like I function as a template of health in regard to whatever it is we're talking about. And that helps them realign their own template. Now, that's what I think today. Ask me tomorrow, I might get a different answer.
Okay. All right.
There have been some fairly miraculous healings. And do you know, I can't remember any of them at the moment. So presumably that means we shouldn't talk about it.
Yeah, no, I get that though. Even with my work, it's like with mediumship, it seems to just flow through and then it's on to the next thing. So I totally get that.
I will say one thing. When I was initially doing it, feeling my way toward it, I used to try and have the energy flow from me to the other person. And I realized later, no, the energy flows through you. Because if you do it from yourself, you can deplete the battery. Now, I just finished saying, it doesn't flow, and yet it flows.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I know why too. I know why too, because the energy flows through, the healing doesn't flow through. Sending the gift of the additional energy allows them to get the extra juice that they need, but they're the ones
who do the healing.
You've probably already experienced people that you cannot help because they just, on a conscious level, they want healing. On some other level, they're going, nope. And you're the thing. And it also means you shouldn't do it.
Absolutely. No, that makes sense. Okay.
Try to do that.
What was that?
Try to do that occasionally.
I had in the back of my mind to ask you about Rita. a little bit, because from my understanding, you've written a book with her after she passed to the spirit world.
4 books.
4 books.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear a little bit about that experience.
Okay, may I make a suggestion? Why don't we make a special program just on Rita, and we'll talk about Rita.
Absolutely, because there's 4 books.
Well, no, not because of that, but we've been going 50 minutes, and that may be more than people want to go.
Yes. Okay, well, how about we wrap it up? But maybe one last description of where people can find your information, and maybe a little view of the books you've written, just a quick summary.
All right. I have a website that I call ofmyoownknowledge.com. And in it, I have a blog, and I've kept the blog since 2007. It's got probably 4,000 some entries. And there are other things as well. That's the first way to get to it, I would say.
Perfect.
I've got all the books. The nonfiction book was Muddy Tracks, and that talked about my from the beginnings through the 4th Monroe program that I took. And it has a very good description, if I do say so, of Gateway, of my experience of Gateway.
Okay.
And in general, it winds up with a section that I forget what I called it, but basically it said, this is just an interim report, because you never know, everything changes. The first book with Rita was transcripts of 22 sessions that she and I did in her house every Tuesday evening in the years 2001 and 2. And I called that the sphere and the hologram. Those were 2 analogies the guys gave us for reality.
Got it. Okay.
After Rita died, and this was a surprise to me, Rita died in 2008. In 2014, I had a dream that basically told me, okay, it's time to get to work again. So the next morning, instead of talking to the guys, I was talking to Rita. And
I love it.
For 6 months, came up with Rita's World, and that's actually in 2 volumes. And then perhaps my favorite is Awakening from the 3D World. I wanted to call it Awakening from the 3D Trance, but my publisher didn't like that. But anyway, that one talks about not a near-death experience, but a death experience, because she was on the other side. And
Yeah.
she remembered all the questions that she had while she was in 3D. And she and I were in that close communion. So she knew what I needed to know as well. And this is what it talks about. And as I say, it's my favorite. Then another one is called It's All One World. And that's all I've gotten from Rita. And I doubt if I'm able to get more, although, who knows. And then there are other books as well. I got 4 novels out there. And
Wow.
well, it seems like wow to me.
Well, thank you so much, Frank. It's been amazing to talk to you, and I can't wait to talk more, get into the Rita material.
Yes. Well, you ask very good questions, and you actually listen to the answers. It's astonishing. I look forward to it as well.
Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Thank you both. This has been an absolutely wonderful discussion. It's funny, one of Frank's books, we talked to one of the AIs once asking who I was, and the response of the AI is, I'm a character in one of Frank's novels, which happens to be true.
I take no responsibility. Dirk, thank you for facilitating this as usual.
Yes.
You're quite welcome. I agree with you. Probably the next session, it would be great to do the discussion about all of the books with Rita and everything that came out of those. I think another one that you started to touch on, Faith, that I think was a great topic is going into energy healing. And, that would be good to do both this way, having you interview Frank, but I think it might also be good to turn it around and have Frank perhaps interview you about your journey and where you are in your mediumship and your energy healing. Sometimes people think, that the folks who've done it for a long time have all the answers. Often I found the people who have the best answers are the ones who are the newbies, who are just exploring, and then the ones who are one step beyond that, and on and on and on, that at each level we learn more and more. So I think those are probably
what we learn is actually true. All right.
Excellent. Well, thank you both. And
I'm just going to say the same thing. Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, please press like. Please press subscribe to stay informed of new episodes as they appear. We would love to hear from you in the comments section below, and we wish you the very best in connecting with your own guidance.